Hello, Mordarim here. In today's video I want to show you my version of the Bouncy Meatball Fireball Sorcerer build for Diablo 4. This build obviously utilizes the Fireball spell in combination with a wide selection of unique items which further enhance the build to be capable of absolute destruction. The biggest strength of the Bouncy Fireball is its immense clearing speed and insane AoE due to fireball explosions. We are capable of deleting entire screens in one cast, with explosions chaining off screen to clear every mob pack that stands near us. The single target damage of this build is also great, however it's bursty in nature, meaning your long-term DPS will suffer due to mana issues in extended fights. You are front-loaded. This in turn means you will never be the best boss killer out there if you do not manage to destroy them in your burst window. As for the playstyle, this one is very simple. You cast Fireball, which kills enemies, which in turn triggers more Fireball explosions due to an enchant. That's about it. No complicated setup, no preparation work needed, just straight up cast to win. The complicated part lies in a gear acquisition for this build. You need the gloves of the Illuminator. This item changes Fireball to bounce 3 times, exploding on each impact. Those explosions overlap, resulting in a net damage increase. And we can further combine this one with the Staff of Endless Rage to cast 2 additional bouncy balls every third cast, all of which can overlap, resulting in a maximum damage effectiveness of 675% compared to a regular Fireball, if you hit the target with every explosion. In short, big damage. Now we are also utilizing a bunch of other uniques such as the T-Ball's Will for more damage and mana sustain, Xaphal's Corroded Signet for more damage, Godslayer for even more damage, and Azu's Heirloom for even more damage in form of additional crit strike chance. We are featuring up to 6 different uniques on this build, but technically only one is required for this one to work, with 2 additional ones to really pop off. Now with that said, let's have a look at the planner. It's a fully written guide with multiple chapters. If you want to read up on something, you can do that just fine. If you want to level with this one, you will need the gloves of the Illuminator. Otherwise, I highly recommend a dedicated leveling build. It's much faster and not as complicated. And if you have any questions or remarks, make sure to ask them down in the comments or in the Discord. Now let's go over the skill tree. We're going to start with 2 points in the Fireball because we need this one as our first enchant. You will find that here. Afterwards, we pick up Fireball, 5 points, Enhanced Fireball, and Greater Fireball. 10% of the burning damage we apply is additional direct damage. This direct damage is additive to the base damage of the spell, which then scales with all your multipliers. So it's very strong. We pick up 1 point in Devastation and 3 points in Elemental Dominance. We are most likely only going to cast our Fireball at 50 or more mana, because we want actually 100 mana because of an aspect. This aspect is the Elementalist aspect. If we cast our core skill, so Fireball, above 100 mana, we get a 40% crit chance increase. This combined with the Azu's Heirloom, which is around 15 to 20% on the build always, and additional sources like our ring for additional crit chance, we can get to around 80 to 100% crit chance when we are casting our Fireball at 100%. This means crit damage is really good. All multipliers that are affecting our crit damage are really good. Something like the aspect of the 3 curses. That's about all our scaling is. The next few things are just to flesh out our defenses. We pick up 1 point in Flame Shield to get invulnerability. We get 5 points in Teleport, 1 point in Enhanced Teleport, and 1 in Shimmering Teleport. We get Frost Nova, just 1 point here. Ice Armor, again just 1 point. Then we pick up Glass Cannon, 3 points here, and 3 points in Elemental Attunement. Now this one is a lucky hit chance. So we need a skill with a high lucky hit chance. And would you look at that? Fireball has a 33% lucky hit chance. Now when we make this one bouncy, and this one hits multiple targets, every single target has a chance to be a lucky hit, which in turn has a chance to proc this effect. So we have an amazing way to proc lucky hits. Resetting our Teleport, Flame Shield is really easy with this build. Next up we pick up Precision Magic, 15% lucky hit chance. Additive is not much, but 15% is better than nothing. Then we pick up Align the Element, 1 point here, 3 points in Mana Shield, 3 points in Protection. In the Mastery cluster we just want the Inner Flames, 3 points here. Then Devouring Blaze for another multiplier, 3 points here, and Crippling Flame. Just 2 points here because we don't actually have another one. In the Ultimate cluster, Fiery Surge for mana regeneration. This one is really strong during mapping. 1 point in Endless Spear and 3 points in Warmth. This one gives us Sustain. Additionally, then we pick up Inferno, Prime Inferno, and Supreme Inferno. Now when we use our Inferno, all our spells are free. This means we can spam our Fireball without ever paying anything, which in turn makes stuff like Elementalist proc. always. Same with Elemental Dominance. So we use Inferno to group up targets and then burst them. It's a really nice spell for this build. And lastly, for our keystone, Asus Ferocity. More crit damage, more crit chance, so always good. So for our enchants, we're going to pick up Fireball as well as Firebolt. Now Firebolt applies burning damage status on enemies. This synergizes really well with a lot of burning stuff, like Devouring Blaze. Against burning enemies, we deal more critical strike damage. Conditional effects like against burning damage are always in need of Firebolt as your enchantment, because your regular Firebolt does not apply it. This one is also amazing with the Xaphar's Corroded Signet. All our damage over time effects, this includes the enchantment of Firebolt. Burning damage of this one can proc this effect. And this one at endgame hits for like 1 million or plus. It's a lot of damage. It's like 41k baseline at the max roll. So it's one of the strongest items for this build. And Fireball, every time we kill anything with any effect, they're going to explode for 50% additional damage with a Fireball. If you want to go for bosses, I would highly recommend going with something like the Flame Shield to get a cheat death effect. Now let's go over the aspects, or better the uniques. Now the first one is the Gloves of the Illuminator. This one changes our Fireball to behave like a bouncy ball. So it's 3 impact, and each of which will deal a little bit less damage. However, all the explosions stack, so it's effectively more damage. We can further combine this one with the Staff of Endless Rage. So every third cast of our Fireball will release 3 bouncy balls, which all can stack. So it's 9 explosions that can overlap. All those targets will also get burned, so this one can proc. This one deals AoE damage. We can further group those enemies with the Godslayer Crown, which then increases the damage even more. As mentioned before, we have the Asus Heirloom as our boots. This one gives us additional crit strike chance based on our movement, and we can stack this one with the Elementalist aspect and aspect of the curses to massively increase our damage. Now what about mana sustain? During regular play you will basically never go home. There is a massive percentage chance to restore your primary resource, around 28%, on your gloves. It's only 5%. This one is not 55%, just 5%. But it's enough during AoE clearing that you are basically always sustaining. So you can spam your Fireball and never go home. But through the combination with our Vampiric Powers, so we have our Metamorphosis here, we are turning into bats and are unstoppable. This will also inflict the Vampiric Curse, so enemies are vulnerable because of Prey on the Weak. But most importantly, we are stacking this one with the Tybalt's Will. So when we use our Metamorphosis, we restore primary resource. When we use our Teleport, we get unstoppable, we restore our primary resource. The same is true for Flame Shield. This one makes us immune, which also counts as unstoppable. So all of which can proc this one. And this one then multiplies our damage again by 20 to 40%. So it's a really strong item. Now defensively we have the aspect of Disobedience. That's the only one we have on our gear. Increases our armor, but this one is enough to basically clear the highest possible Nightmare Dungeon of 100. Because at this point you need a few things. The Elixir that gives you 900 armor. The Incense that gives you 200. Then you need 3 Scar Gems in your jewelry, 750. You have total armor on your armor and total armor on your amulet, which is 50% additional armor, all of which gets then the percentage increase. And at the end, you will have around 14k armor, or at least 13k. This one is then enough to clear high level content. You need to cap your resistances, get your armor up and running, and the damage of this one is more than enough. So this one is very well suited to clear Nightmare Dungeon 100, all of which is explained right here. High Nightmare Dungeons and bosses. Now before we move on, there's a lot of legendary aspects here. The most important one is the Gloves of the Illuminator. All other uniques are kind of optional. So as long as you have the gloves, you can basically go blasting. For the alternatives for this one, there is a chapter just for that. If you do not have the Godslayer Crown, use the Ever-Living aspect on the helmet. You can find the stats on the gear by just toggling this one on. The priority is 1, 2, 3. So you have the Godslayer Crown here. But if you do not have this one, use the aspect listed down below. So the Ever-Living aspect. And then prioritize maximum life, then life on kill, then total armor, then lightning resistance. This one is then listed for every single item right here. So if you do not have the boots, go for the Ghostwalker aspects on the boots. If you do not have Tybalt's Will, do not use the Xaphar's Corroded Signet, but the Incendiary aspect to regenerate mana on a lucky hit, or Prodigy's aspect to regenerate mana on a cooldown. On the pants you can then use the aspect of the Protector. And as for the weapon, so if you do not have the Staff of the Endless Rage, you can use the aspect of the Ancient Flames, Edgemaster, or Storm Spell aspect. And as always, Every single gear piece has the start priority right here. Now let's talk about the 3 items that are not, and repeat, not uniques. So you have the chest armor, you have the amulet, and you have the ring. Now for the chest armor, you need total armor, maximum life, shadow resistance, poison resistance. This one is the only item that can have your resistances. So with that in mind, we designed the Paragon Board to include cold resistance, lightning resistance, and fire resistance. So this one is taken care of by the Paragon Board. Shadow resistance and poison resistance need to be taken care of by the body armor or by the gem slots in the amulets, ring and other ring. But if you want to push high nightmare dungeons, you need to sacrifice either the boots or the Godslayer crown if you do not have the chest armor with shadow resistance, total armor, poison resistance. Really important that you max out those things. It's really, really important. You will get one shot otherwise, because you need the skies in your amulet, ring and other ring. For the other gems, weapons with the emerald and ruby for the armor, so more health. Then the amulet. Movement speed because we are scaling ASOS. Total armor because we really need that physical damage mitigation. Mana cost reduction and ranks to devouring blaze. Very easy. And then for the other ring, crit chance, resource generation, maximum life and lucky hit chance. Copy this ring to the other slot if you do not have the Xarfire's corroded ring. If you have Tybalt's Will and do not want to use Xarfire's corroded ring, you can just use the incendiary aspect or the prodigy's aspect, so like before. For the defenses there is more details here, so cold resistance, lightning resistance, Paragon Board jewelry and so on and so forth. Everything is explained here. Now as for scaling your damage, there is a few things I need to talk about. The first one is Frigid Fate is on the board. It still increases our damage, because when we look at the Frigid Fate in the Paragon Board, it reads you deal bonus damage to vulnerable enemies. The bonus damage, the more multiplier, is based on the cold damage, but there is no statement here that it only works for cold damage. So the fireball works, but you're not stacking cold damage. That's not a problem, because we have a ton of nodes like this one. Non-physical damage, 20%. Non-physical damage, 20%. 5% here, 5% here, 5% here, 20% here, 5, 5, 5. And we boost this one then by the rare glyph here, which is the Unleash glyph. And at the start, we are going to use the Enchanter glyph, which is around 70 to 80% additional non-physical damage. So we maxed out the Frigid Fate node, and we also maxed out the Searing Heat node, which is 30% here and 30% here. So that's a little bit of our scaling. So because we apply vulnerable, Frigid Fate works. We have Prey on the weak and the Stormspell aspect on the gear. If you have it on the weapon, it's also working just fine. And because of our incredibly high crit chance, which is near 100%, we can also utilize crit damage very well. Now for the Vampiric Powers, you have Undying for sustain, Metamorphosis to synergize with Tybalt's Will, and for Unstoppable, we have Prey on the weak, which applies vulnerable because we apply the Vampiric Curse through a Cursed Touch, so we have a high lucky hit chance, spread our inflicted Vampiric Curse on enemies, and then we have the Ravenous. Now Ravenous gives us 60% increased attack speed for 6 seconds because of our total movement, which is on a lucky hit, but we have a really high lucky hit chance because of our Fireball, so we can proc this one basically 100% of the time, and we don't need any attack speed additionally on any other gear piece. On the Paragon Board, nothing like that, and we can still use the Staff of Endless Rage without going insane because of the clunky playstyle of two-handed weapons. With the Ravenous Vampiric Power, this one is perfectly smooth. Next, let's talk about the gameplay loop. We cast Fireball, then we use our dash to stack curses, and we teleport, for example, to release those curses, and those fireballs then from the enchant. The curses kill enemies, kill more enemies, triggering a chain reaction. If we want to trigger our burst damage, use Inferno. This will make our fireballs free. We can spam them, 100% crit chance, a lot of damage. And then use your other spells as your tools to prevent death. And for the boss rotation, cast Inferno, then cast Fireball, then dash to replenish mana. It's very easy. The playstyle of this one is very simple. And at last, let's go over the skill tree. This one is a little bit complicated because we loop around. So the basic idea is the starter board has the Enchanter glyph. So this one gives us non-physical damage. We get 10% maximum resistance for fire spells in our enchantment slot, and then we path through here to the Searing Heat board, grab this one on the way, grab a little bit of fire damage, and then we move on to the Frigid board. Do the same here, grab the Frigid node, grab the lucky hit chance here. There is also a little bit of damage reduction from vulnerable, so that's also really nice to grab. Get to the glyph, slot in Tactician, get the 10% more damage after casting a defensive skill, so for example teleport. You also get a bunch of cold resistance and vulnerable damage. Then we path to the next board, which is the Enchantment Master board. We basically get the glyph first. So this one is the Unleash glyph. All of those magic nodes, so the non-physical damage, the dexterity, the willpower, and the resistances, the all resistances are very valuable for this build. So boosting those is really nice. We also get a little bit of a more multiplier for our mana regeneration and for our damage. Then we path here, grab the non-physical damage, path to the next one, which is the Burning Instinct board. The Burning Instinct glyph is on the other side. It's really hard to get to, and it's generally not worth it to get on this build. So we focus on the glyph. For the glyph, we have the Flame Feeder glyph, gives us 10% more damage with our fireball, increased damage to burning targets. On the board, we path around this glyph, grab it in the middle and path here. So damage reduction from enemies that are burning is also really nice. And then we path down here, back to the Searing Heat board. We get a little bit of fire damage here, we get a little bit of fire resistance here. We slot in the Pyromaniac glyph, which increases our fire resistance and fire damage, and we get a more multiplier because of the threshold bonus. And lastly, we path to the Keyless Conduit board, grab the glyph slot for destruction, so more crit strike damage and a more multiplier because of critical strikes we deal to them. We get a little bit of lightning resistance and lightning damage here, but the lightning damage is not that important, not at all. We are interested in the dexterity up here. And this basically sums up the whole board. Grab the legendary nodes first, then the glyph slots, and then level 1 by 1 by 1 by 1 by 1 to 15, flash out the boards, and you're golden. So this sums up the build guide. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you have any questions or remarks, please comment down below or on my Discord. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can join the channel membership or leave a donation if you have the spare coin. So see you next time, and bye.